Good morning, Kingdom Builders. Welcome to day 19 of our 30-day challenge. And today is Friday. Friday usually carries a different type of energy, whether you realize it or not. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're in. I can safely say that we all have a different energy level when Friday gets here. For a lot of us, it represents freedom, some type of relief, maybe some escape. For others, it's about indulgence. Friday night, bar hopping, Saturday night, clubs. And you can feel it. You can feel it when you go to the gym. Fridays are my favorite gym days because it's empty. Saturdays, somewhat. But I think our discipline loosens on Saturday. Our attention starts to shift, and people begin looking toward the weekend instead of being present as another day that they're actually living. And there's nothing wrong with this, okay? Nothing wrong with enjoying Friday. Nothing wrong with rest and recovery, celebrations, especially if you've had a productive week. My warning is don't allow Friday to become more than what it is. It is just another day. But we give power to it. We tell ourselves, oh, I'll throw off restraint until Monday. I've earned it. It's just a weekend. One day won't hurt. One weekend won't hurt. And before you know it, Friday becomes a lifestyle of delay, postponing. What's the word? Oh my goodness, lost my train of thought. Procrastination. Especially when you're in the middle of a project, you're in the middle of an assignment. And it's interesting that some of the biggest mistakes that people make, especially in my line of work, it happens on Friday. I noticed the guys take longer lunch breaks. And in my life, I've noticed a lot of the financial mistakes, relationship mistakes, they tend to happen on those days. And that's because we tend to stop stewarding as diligently as we should on Fridays. And we start following or submitting to the energy that's around us. One famous saying is HALT, HALT. Dr. Charles Stanley. I learned this from Dr. Charles Stanley, and he said, never be too hungry, too angry, too lonely, too tired. And I would like to add, never be too careless or too reckless, because that's when those thoughts sneak in. The crowd tends to relax, and so we relax. The crowd says, hey, time to go party, so we party. But we're stewards, okay? So we have to ask a different question. And what does today require of me? And I'm in a different season of my life. And I just noticed this recently. And this season does not call for the same level of activity that last season called for. It's a different type of activity, a different intensity of the activity. And I had to submit to that. I was very resistant to it. And now I'm more comfortable in that flow. So getting on to day 19, I know that was a long segue, but let's be grateful for Friday. And especially if you have progress for this week, let's celebrate that. Celebrate the small wins. But don't surrender your standards because it's Friday. Don't throw off restraint. And don't let the energy of the masses, the crowds, determine what way you go, determine your direction. Because guess what? The same God who was present on Monday is in your life on Friday. And the same discipline that served you on Monday or Tuesday is going to serve you today. So the assignment is still in front of you. So for day 19, let's get into it. Day 19 is in response to a few questions that were asked in the group. And if you don't have access to the group, I'll ask those questions right now. And they were in response to our day 18, which was about being childlike. And so the main questions were, how do we balance childlike trust in God with the responsibility to plan, prepare, and exercise wisdom? That was one. The second one is, where is the line between faithful stewardship and trying to control everything ourselves? And thirdly, what does it practically look like to trust God while still doing our due diligence? And this comes down to essentially what Jesus said about being childlike. And so this person is seeking to understand our perspective, my perspective, our as a group. What do we truly understand when Jesus said to be childlike? Because I've heard people explain it in so many different ways. So day 19 is in response to that. And it's really all about stewardship versus control. And I'd like to use an example that we're using in our fellowship group. Right now, we're in Genesis, and we just studied Noah and the ark. And I think Noah is an exceptional example of the line between stewardship and control, because he built the ark without trying to control the flood. He just did what he was told to do. And I'm going to attempt to answer these questions. They're great questions. So let's follow along. Let's go deeper into that story of Noah. And in my opinion, it's one of the clearest biblical examples of the question that one of our members asked, between the difference between stewardship and control. Because when we read Genesis, we focus on the ark. But I think the deeper lesson is Noah controlled what was his responsibility, and he surrendered everything else that wasn't. And that's part of our challenge. That's the essence of our challenge, is submitting control, surrendering control, allowing life to unfold, trusting, having the childlike faith. And that's wisdom. When we read the story, God said to Noah, make an ark. Now, God didn't say, make an ark and make sure you save the world. He didn't say, control the rain. He didn't say, convince everybody to believe you. He didn't say, go and find every animal or as many animals that'll fit in the ark. He just said, build the ark. And he gave him instructions on what the ark's measurements would be. And that was his assignment. And I think that's where we miss it, because God gives us an assignment, and then we start trying to do things that were never assigned to us. You know, we hear God says to us clearly, start the business. But we hear, guarantee the revenue, set income goals. God says to us, be a husband. But we hear, make sure your kids are wearing the best clothes and go to the best schools and guarantee every outcome for your children. Make sure that when they grow up, they're excellent. And these are controlling the outcomes. God told Noah to build the ark. That was it. Noah's responsibility after that is to gather the wood, follow the measurements, cut the wood, build the structure, make sure he had provisions, and bring his family. And then go in when, the instruction was given. And that's stewardship. Noah could not control the rain, when it came, when it stopped. He didn't control the storm, the animals. I'm sure the animals were pooping all over the place. He didn't control people's opinions about him. I'm sure there were people that were haters, his oppositions. I'm sure there were people that were confused. They asked him a bunch of questions. He didn't control when the door opened. He didn't control anything. All he did was obey. He built, and then he prepared. He allowed God to do what only God could do. And I think this is powerful, because I used to be exhausted. Not because I was doing my part, but I was trying to do God's part too. I was worried about the future. I was preparing things that I needed to work out this way or else. Now just imagine Noah waking up every morning and saying, okay, the rain is coming. When is it going to come? How do I make it rain so we can just get this process started? He would have gone crazy trying to control the rain. Imagine him trying to control the clouds or predict the exact date. I don't think he knew. Or convince people in his community to agree with him and to get on this thing. That was not his assignment. His assignment was not to convince anybody to get on. His assignment was simple, and I don't think it was easy. I think we make it look easy building this ark. I think that was another thing that we missed, is the assignment is simple, but it's not easy. It does require work. It does require effort. But I think the lesson in that building was build what God told you to build. Build the business that God told you to build. Build the family that God told you to build. And we're trying to create everything else except the thing that God told us to build. We're trying to control the outcome. I got to make $1 million this year. I got to, talk to 10 customers or 100. I have to sell to 100. Now, when God says to you, if God has told you start the business, that doesn't mean you carry the weight of the economy on your back. It doesn't mean that now you have to worry about, oh man, the economy's not doing good. Well, how do you know that's going to affect you? Well, now you've given your energy into planning for an outcome that has nothing to do with you. If God told you to start the business, don't you think God would tell you if the economy was going to go sour and you should put away some savings or put away this and that? But we don't trust that. We only think that God tells us the good stuff. Now, we see in Joseph when God gave a clear warning to Joseph, put away for 7 years. Why can't God do that today? Now, you can't control every customer, every employee, or every sale. But in your business, you may be able to train them. You may be able to get systems. You may be able to put together processes, following up with customers. That's effort. You can check the numbers. You can watch the books. You can build the product. You can deliver excellence. Create a structure. Create a culture. You can solve problems. You can inspect the quality of the goods that you deliver, whether it's you're a manufacturer, whether you're a designer. You can show up with excellence. You can even show up when you don't feel like it. That is within your control. Those are the so-called proverbial boards that you have to nail for your arc. But what does control say? Control says, well, what if I do all this and nobody buys my product? I'll give you an example. Those of you who know me know that I'm in the transportation business and we build vehicles. And I've had some vehicles. I've got one vehicle right now that it's what we call an aged vehicle. It's been sitting on our lot for longer than it should. The old me would have panicked. People are looking around like, man, are you going to sell it? What are you going to do? I don't know. What if there's somebody that needs this particular vehicle and they're just waiting for the right amount of money or something? I have no idea. That's an outcome that I can't control. Or what if I eventually, sold the unit and I mismanaged the funds because I was in a situation that required faith? I don't know. So asking, well, what if nobody buys it? What if the economy changes? People ask me this all the time. Well, aren't you afraid that things are going to shrink? The price of fuel is high. I don't know. I'm doing what I was what I was called to do. Right now, today, unless God speaks to me and says it's time to fold up, go to another business, I don't know. What if the customer doesn't like it? I don't know. I will do what is within my control and within my assignment to do. And some of these are real concerns, okay? But they can't become my God. I can't be focused on an outcome that is beyond my capacity and capability to control. What I can do is steward the process. What I can do is make sure my employees are well trained. What I can do, what you can do, is make sure you have processes in place. If you end the day and ask yourself, did I do everything I could do today? And the answer is yes, you should rest in peace. You should be able to go home and know that you've given it your all. No anxiety, no worry, no fear, no doubt. The rest is God's job. That's all you can do. Noah built the ark. He couldn't force the animals to come in. I mean, I just imagine you building this ark and trying to get a lion to go in there, knowing there's a gazelle. He didn't worry about that. He trusted. And to me, that's fascinating because the Bible doesn't present Noah as a man that was, going around the entire earth trying to capture every animal. what the story that I read, it shows the animals came to him. Let's put ourselves in that situation. We're Noah. God asks us to build an ark. The first thing I'm thinking is, okay, how do I get these animals to come in? And how do I separate them? That's not my responsibility. I'll use today as an example. Build the business. Okay, how do I get customers? That's not your responsibility today. And please do not confuse this with being irresponsible. I'll give you an example in my business. How do I get customers? Well, guess what? I can only control my marketing effort. I can't control the marketing response. How do I get customers? I don't know. I do know how I can reach people. Whether they'll become a customer, it's beyond my control. And I can continue to tweak it. So for our business, for example, if we get an inbound of 100 calls, typically we convert on 10% of them. So 10 people. And usually 4 of those will buy. If I sit here trying to do the numbers, all I can do is try to call or try to generate as many inbound calls as possible. I can't convert them or force them or pressure them into buying. If they're going to buy, they're going to buy. One week we had a situation where our conversion rate dropped. And then one customer made up for the entire week. They bought out our entire fleet. I couldn't have seen that coming. And so when we go back to what's ours and what's not, we have one job, and it's to steward. Our job is to be ready when the next step is presented. Think about that. That part, I'm going to repeat it again. Our job is to be ready when the next step presents itself. Think about Noah. Noah's job was not to chase all these animals and try to put them in. His job was to build and be prepared. Some opportunities that we think we need to chase are going to come to us. Those animals, they came to Noah. But when they find you, you better be prepared. When they find you, you better be ready. When that husband comes looking for you, you better be a wife. Don't wait for that husband to come for you to turn into a wife. When that loan gets approved, you better have something to spend it on, invest it in. When the investor comes knocking, your business and your books better be together. Some customers don't need to be forced. They need to find you in a position where they can buy from you. You don't need to kick down every door. Preparation is what's needed. And that's what being a steward is all about. That obedience is going to create a level of alignment that's necessary for the next level of your growth. Noah built the ark and the animals came. If I look at this from a business standpoint, a lot of us are chasing animals and we forget about the ark. Imagine if Noah got his assignment confused and said, you know what? I got to build the ark. I got to get these animals. Let me put the ark off. Let me get the animals first. No. Do the thing that God told you to do. We're chasing sales and don't even have systems. We're chasing growth and expansion and don't even train the people that are supposed to respond when the growth comes. You want to expand and your quality is terrible. Focus on excellence. You want more, but you can't steward what's already in your hands. And we call it faith. Faith without stewardship, it's almost like a fantasy. Noah didn't just sit there and say, well, God will save me. I hear this all the time. People are saying, well, we're depending on God to lose the weight. No, God is not going to help you lose that weight, sister. Brother, God is not going to help you save the business. You need to take action and stop making bad decisions. You need to step up. You see, this thing that we're living on, this planet, yes, God intervenes. But this whole thing, God has given us dominion over. We have stewardship over it. It's like you putting your kids in the backyard and saying, go play. And then one of them comes to you and says, Daddy, can we play hopscotch or jump ropes? I don't care what you play. Just play safe. If you need me to come in and help you, I'm happy to help you. But I can't determine what you play. That's up to you. Whatever you build, once God has told you to build it with excellence. Noah built, Noah measured, Noah worked, he obeyed. And I believe that faith is it has a level of obedience without anxiety. And I'm living proof of this. I used to obey. I was the most obedient steward, but I had that anxiety. Okay, I'm doing this, but what's happened? This is years ago when I first started, because I went from a business that had pretty much guaranteed income to jumping into this where I didn't know anything. And it was risky. I didn't know where my next customer was going to come from. And then I realized that's not my job. Every single one of those customers was so weird. They came from places that I didn't expect, from referrals, from being in certain environments. And this applies to my relationships, how I found my wife or discovered her or she discovered me. We're called to be good husbands, good wives, to love. But what we hear and what we do is we try to control. We try to make our spouses serve us. We try to people please. And God says lead with humility, but we hear make sure that I'm never misunderstood. And being a husband or being a wife, it doesn't mean controlling your spouse's emotions. We can listen, we can serve, we can lead, we can apologize, but we can't control another person's heart, and that belongs to God. So the moment we move from loving to controlling, we've left stewardship. And I think a lot of relationships suffer because people stop focusing on their assignment and start trying to manage somebody else's assignment. And in relationships, the question is not really, how do I make this person who I want them to be? I used to ask that question, man, why can't she just be this way? Let's look within and ask, what does love require of me today? And this applies. I talk a lot about business because I enjoy business. I enjoy the process of commerce, of transacting. But this applies to relationships. God might have put it in your heart to start the family. And then fear asks, well, what if we don't have enough money? And there's a good example of, in fact, I'll just put it out there. My brother-in-law, I know that he got married to my sister when they were essentially teenagers. But he says that God told him to marry her. And if he would have allowed fear to be his master, he would have listened to those questions. I'm pretty sure they asked, and people ask, well, how are you going to pay the mortgage? What if you don't have enough money? What if you're not ready? What if, the economy tanks? I mean, what about children? What if they struggle? And those are not evil questions, and we weren't evil in our intent. Those are wise questions. But there's a difference between asking the question and worshiping the question and allowing the question to be your master. And he didn't do that. Anxiety worships those questions. Wisdom prepares. Anxiety obsesses. Wisdom says, let's see what could happen. Let me manage and steward what I have. And control says, man, I have to eliminate all these risks. I have to control tomorrow, the next year, prepare for my my kids' college tuition fund and all this other stuff. And it's almost like you're waiting for the risk. You're de-risking is what the term is. But if you wait until there is absolutely no risk, how does your faith grow? You might not even ever move. And Noah didn't He didn't build because the weather report confirmed that there was rain. I'm pretty sure it was a sunny day. But he built because God told him to. And the same goes for my brother-in-law. He married my sister because God told him to. He didn't worry about, oh, how am I going to make it? And he had tough days. He had days that he struggled, and that built his faith. And the same applies to business. You don't become careless. You become clear. And discerning the difference between preparation and obsession, between planning and panicking, between stewardship and control, that is the job of a kingdom builder. What is mine to do today is the question that we should be asking. What has God put in front of me? What has God entrusted me? Go look at your bank account. What's in there today? Okay, what do I need to do with it? God, show me what I need to do. Show me who I need to be a blessing to. Show me who I need to serve. Not, hey, God, I got $1,000 in my bank account. Show me how I can guarantee that I make 20% on this. That's what control says. Control says, I'm not going to sleep until I know for sure that nothing can go wrong. And that's the level of certainty that I'm talking about. Certainty doesn't improve our faith. If you have 100% certainty in the outcome, your faith does not increase. You don't need faith. The certainty that I'm referring to is certainty in the outcome. What we have certainty is that God is with us. Certainty in the holder of the outcome. That's what improves our faith. The fact that we don't know how it's going to end, but we trust that there's a God who does and who has our best interest in mind. That's what builds our faith, in my opinion. So I want to end things because some of us, we think that trusting God means that life will never disappoint us or will never shake. But what I think is when you trust God, it just means you remain covered while everything else shakes around you. It means you can be at peace in the middle of a storm. And this is where the childlike faith becomes practical. Okay, a child doesn't have to worry about a mortgage or, a retirement account and all those other things, insurance. But a child does have responsibilities. They may have to clean their room, do their homework. And that's where we lose our peace. Because the child has assignments, but they don't carry the ultimate responsibility. Because we confuse our assignment with our ultimate responsibility. God might give you the boards to nail, but God never asked you to become the source. The child smiles when they see their father because their certainty is not rooted in their own understanding, but their certainty is rooted in the presence of the one who created them. And I think that's what childlike faith looks like. It doesn't mean that we throw off restraint or abandon wisdom or, become irresponsible. But we plan from a place of peace instead of fear. We can save money without worshiping money or worshiping the outcome. We can check our bank accounts and check our savings, or even if you got cash in the house, check that without believing that it's your savior. And from a business and a family standpoint, you can be the leader of your household, the leader of your business, without believing that everything depends on you. That's what I mean by ultimate responsibility. Your assignment is to lead your family, but everything doesn't depend on you. If your child becomes a wayward child, that's not on you. Your responsibility is to lead the business. If the business goes sideways, that's not on you. If you did the best and you did exactly what was required, that's not on you. And that's the balance that I think we need to strive for. If you look at Noah, he wasn't passive. He did the day-to-day work that was required. He was obedient. He wasn't careless. He stayed prepared. He wasn't controlling. He surrendered. And I think we sometimes confuse that there's just two options. Either we control everything or do nothing. That was part of the question. And when we read the scripture, it gives us a better way. In terms of Noah, he built the ark. He didn't care about the flood. He planted the seed. He released the growth. And we look throughout scripture and we see the same pattern. Train the child and they will go in the way of the Lord. Release the outcome. Love your wife. Love your neighbor. Release the response. It's not up to us if they love us back. Start the business. Release the market. Don't worry about the market. Release the illusion. I've heard this due diligence thing. Due diligence is not going to remove all of the uncertainty that you might have. So let's release that illusion right now. You can do all the due diligence in the world and still live with anxiety. Remember Joseph, he interpreted Pharaoh's dream and he had he stored the grain for those 7 years. I think it was 7 years. That's stewardship. Joseph could not control the famine though. He couldn't control the weather. He couldn't control the brothers who betrayed him. He stewarded what was in front of him. And God used what was behind him. Look at Nehemiah. Go do some research on that. He built the wall. That was stewardship. He prayed, but he worked. He trusted God. And he also had a sword and a tool. I think on one hand there was a sword, the other hand was a tool. That was kind of funny to me. Not funny, but it was interesting. But prayer and trust, it doesn't remove the responsibility that we have. We still have a duty and obligation. And I can keep going on and on and on. David, you got to steward what's in front of you. The victory is going to come from God, but there's stewardship. So if you can't control the outcome, can you still have peace? That's the test. Oh, I need to know what's going to happen next week. If losing control makes me lose peace, then is your trust really in God or the outcome? Maybe your trust is in the money. I know for me, when I see the money in the account, I used to get a certain level of peace. Okay, I can make the payroll. But when that money wasn't there, at first I would get anxiety, but now it's like, okay, let me see what God's trying to do. A child is not certain because they know everything. Again, they're certain because they trust the one that's in charge. And that's a safe assumption. Because we all live by assumptions. And there are some assumptions that I think are safe. You can assume that your car will start in the morning. And if it doesn't, you can deal with it. You can assume that the food you eat is safe. Life is impossible without assumptions. So the issue is not about whether we assume. The issue is what are our assumptions rooted in? Are they rooted in fear or trust? And so for day 19, I want to give you a few assumptions that will help us in our art of allowing. Number one, let's assume that tomorrow is not guaranteed. And that we don't know what tomorrow is. Plan for it, but don't obsess over it. Number two, assume that you don't have all the information. Assume that your perspective is incomplete. You only have one side of the picture. There may be something that God sees that you can never see. Assume that every detail is important. If you build today, every single detail matters. Every screw, every stitch, every word. Assume that every delay is in God's plan. It's not a denial. These people in the Bible, Abraham waited years for that child. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I need my child next week. But just because God delayed something that God told you doesn't mean it's not coming. And with that assumption, we have to also assume that growth takes longer than we think. The seeds don't become trees overnight. Another powerful assumption I want you to think about is assume that every single thing that you do, every effort that you take, every preparation that you make is not wasted. Every weight that you lift in the gym counts. And the opposite counts as well. Every time that you waste counts. The donut that you choose to eat instead of the piece of broccoli, it counts. Assume that peace is a better guide than panic. Just stop. Stop for a moment and breathe. If you are too busy to stop for 2 minutes, you need to reevaluate your priorities. And assume that God has given you responsibility, but there are limits to what you can do. And lastly, and you can think of some more, but assume that God can do what you can't do. God can carry that weight. And these things, they sound simple, but we are living our life like everything depends on us. We say we believe in God, but the truth of the matter is we're acting as if God doesn't even exist. So I want you to think about these assumptions. They're not excuses, okay? I think they're anchors. Let's look at them as anchors for peace, because they don't remove our responsibility, but they remove that burden. And this is what this act of allowing is about. Allowing doesn't mean I don't do anything. It just means I do what is mine without trying to become God over the outcome. Allowing means I can build with excellence and still sleep at night. It means I can check the bank account. I can check the savings and not let the business become my identity. I can love my family without trying to control every single thing that goes on. I can plan for the future without living in fear. I can live in the joyous expectancy of God's best. I can prepare for the rain like Noah did without trying to control the clouds. And if we summarize what Noah's revelation was, build the ark, do the work, follow the instructions, measure, prepare the food, bring your family, and when you're called, go inside. That's it. And then once everything else came into play, he got more instructions. Don't try to become the source. Noah's greatness was not that he controlled everything. His greatness was that he obeyed God in the things that he could. He stewarded and trusted God in the things that he could not control. And the question I have for you guys is, where are we controlling something that God did not ask us to control? What are we calling wisdom when it's really fear? Where are we calling something planning when it's really anxiety? We're trying to make it rain instead of building the ark. Stewardship focuses on what's in front of us. Control focuses on what's the next day, the next week, the outcome. So we don't have to guarantee the future. All we got to do is put the effort in and build. Make the call, love that person, apologize where needed, trust God, train the employee, serve the customer, pray the prayer, meditate, take the next step, and release what was never yours to carry. Because just like Noah, we have an ark that we have to build in our lives. And God will bring whatever is needed for that ark to become functional. And that's all I got for day 19. Steward the process, release the outcome. Stop trying to control things.